Today we are going to do the introduction to flowcharts. So what is a flowchart? Basically, a flowchart is a diagram that depicts the flow of a program. And here is an example. The example on the right is shown here, where it is a flowchart for a pay and calculate program. So here it shows here, for the first, it starts, it says it will display a message, how many hours did you work, and the user will input the hours, and then you have to put in how much is the rate of payment per hour, and then they will read a variable called the pay rate, and then the operation is multiplying the hours by the pay rate, and it will store the result in a variable named gross pay. And then the program will display gross pay, or the value that is calculated, and the flowchart ends. So flowcharts are usually used for programming or for software systems, and it can also be used for hardware systems. So the flowchart symbols, there are several symbols. So the first is the ellipse. The ellipse shape shows the start and end of a flowchart, and it is used to indicate the beginning of or the end of the flowchart. Next is the parallelogram shape. The parallelogram shape is used to read data input or to print an output. And so if you have an input data or a variable, you can put it in the parallelogram. And next is the rectangle. So the rectangle shows what kind of processing. So in the previous example, it showed the multiplication. So this is written in the rectangle. There is another symbol which is known as the diamond, and the diamond allows, for example, a yes and no question. So you can put one branch which will answer the word yes to the question, or will answer the no. So the no, it will go down. And the arrows are also used to indicate the flow of the problem or the sequence. So how can we relate this to your project? So for example, here we are going to do a project which is to measure the pH or the soil moisture for a plant. So for example, this is your project for your IDP, and you want to create a system that can measure the soil moisture or the pH for the plant in order to check the well-being of the plant. So this is related to the design specifications of the system. So you have the design specification, which is what the user needs, and the user wants to know the soil condition to keep the plant healthy. This is the design specification, and based on that, we have to use something that is called as the design attribute. The design attribute is, this is the design attribute, which you want to have sensors which can measure the moisture and the pH of the plant. And then you have to have what is the design characteristic. So you have to know what is the pH and what is the value or the numbers. So for here, you use a sensor to measure the pH, and you have to know what pH is suitable for plants. Okay, so here we have put it into the table. So here I am just going to focus on the pH sensor. So the design specifications involves the user requirements, the design attribute, and the design characteristic. So for example, you have the user requirement, which is you want to keep the plant healthy by checking the soil condition. And the other requirement is if the soil condition is not optimum, you can send an alert to the user that something is wrong. So the design attribute is check the pH of the plant, and then you have to measure. How can you check the pH? You have to measure the pH using a pH meter. And when we translate that into numbers, the acceptable pH is between 5.5 and 6.5. So if the pH is lower or higher than this, the system will give a real-time notification to the user, and you would like the time of notification to be within 1 hour. So how do we put this into an example flowchart? Okay, so we start, right? You have a start, and you use this shape for start, and then you put in a message that the system is going to measure the pH of the soil. So now the sensor is activated, and it will read the current pH, right? So once it has read the current pH, it will check if the pH is within 5.5 and 6.5. So if it is within 5.5 and 6.5, then it is good. The soil is within the good pH range, and this will be displayed. If it is not, right, now the system will check, is this below 5.5? So if yes, then the soil is acidic. So the user will know that they have to do something to balance the low level of the pH. And if it is not below 5.5, that means it is higher than 6.5, then the soil is too alkaline. So the user will also know that they have to do something to the plant or to the soil in order to neutralize it. So basically, making the flowchart is very simple. So this is a very simple example to help you understand which blocks to use and which items to put into your flowchart. Okay, thank you.